Well, welcome back, everyone, to Coffee, Chaos, and Cash Flow. I am really excited to be joined today with Drew Sutton. He is here to talk about a different kind of philanthropy and a different kind of investing. His organization, Jubilee Capital, is built on a radical idea that your capital isn't just meant to be preserved or spent, but multiplied to create systemic, sustainable change. Drew, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, man, I'm super good. I am super pumped to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've got a couple cool additional introductory remarks to make. So, but I'm gonna jump into some icebreakers just to kind of loosen everything up, and then I'll come back to that. So it's gonna be a lot of fun today. Drew, tell me if you could. This is like a would you rather? Would you rather live where it only ever snows, or the temperature never falls below 100 degrees?
Okay, so I lived in Texas for 5 years, and I can tell you that that's miserable.
Okay.
I used to tell people, they're like, "What's it like in Texas?" Because we're both in Kentucky, so they're like, "What's it like in Texas?" And I was like, "You know how when you walk out the door and you feel the sun physically pressing you into the blacktop?" And all my Kentucky friends would be like, "No, like that's what it feels like."
That's what it's like. Yikes.
So I think I would go snow, because you can always put on a bigger parka.
I'm the same way. Yeah, I really do prefer colder weather, so that's cool. What growing up, high school, college, at any point in your education, which subject or course of study was your least favorite?
It was English, which is ironic because I'm working on writing a book right now. But I think that I thought that English was about spelling, and then I think I was just, as a 15-year-old boy, too immature to realize that there were themes in books, right? And I was like, what are we talking about? So that was, but then ironically, on the AP test, like when you get college credit, I was one of 3 people in my high school that that passed the AP, and I passed it with a 5. And everybody was like, wow, but you're bad at English. Turns out I'm just bad at spelling.
Okay. That's hilarious. Love it. All right. And then lastly,
real quick note on spelling. Do you know why the English language has so many rules?
I could think of a few reasons why.
To explain all the exceptions.
Okay, there we go. I figured it was something like that. We have young kids like 11 through 4, and so we're in various stages of, and they're kind of mostly past. The youngest one is like learning to do letters and read now, but yeah, we've done the whole thing with all of them. It's like this rule applies most of the time, except for when it just totally doesn't apply.
Right. Totally.
And there's nothing like, as a parent, there's very few things that are more frustrating than saying to your kid, this is the rule, you should know this. Oh, here's a word where they implemented the rule and it doesn't apply. So screw this word. This doesn't apply here.
So the S, we're both homeschooling families, so I love this. And then we can move on. But so the S sound, or the letter S, makes the Z sound 70% of the time.
Oh gosh, 70?
Yeah. Because every time there's an ES, like there's a multiple ES, that's the Z sound. Right. So yes.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. It's really something. All right. Lastly, which cartoon character do you wish was real?
I'm actually going to go with Captain America. He is by far my favorite hero of all time.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Good. All right. So I said when we got started, I had a couple more introductory remarks. This is kind of a cool moment for me, having Drew on the podcast, for a couple of reasons. One, he's a great guy. I've known him for several years now, and I love everything that he's done and is doing right now. But in an interesting way, he was my first experience in podcasting ever. So the first podcast I ever guested on was the Drew Sutton Leadership Show. So that was a fun foray for me to get into podcasting as a guest. I've since guested on a few different shows and then ended up co-hosting a podcast. So it's just kind of cool to have Drew on now, because it's like a little bit of a full circle moment for me. So that's cool. And the other thing I like about Drew is you're an engineer in a lot of your background, right? Like you have that thought process, but yet somehow you are also one of the more creative people that I know. And that fascinates me, because I am not a creative. I've like never represented a brand new idea. I just like to duplicate systems that work. That's like always been my thing. So if somebody brings me a new idea, I like to figure out if we can make it work and, develop it. But I do not personally come up with anything new ever. So it's always cool to see somebody who is very, very good on the technical front and has done the things you've done, but also is thinking of ways to create something different. And particularly here with Jubilee Capital, getting into that was just a good representation of that. So all around, really fantastic person, going to be a great guest, and good moment for me to be able to talk to somebody that kind of got me out into the world of podcasting. So thanks again, Drew, for joining us.
Yeah, man. I'll say this, and I think that everybody I know feels this way about you, is that we all secretly hope one day we can be as cool as you. And so to
Oh
be on
gosh.
your show is a real treat.
Okay. Well, I'm flattered you want to be as cool as me. I'm not sure what that means, but we will figure it out somewhere down the road. That's awesome. All right, so Drew, I want you to give a little bit of introduction into what Jubilee Capital is, but I want to maybe start. I've seen where you've said that there's this thing called the charity trap, right? So
Yes.
maybe start with that analogy and explain what you mean by the charity trap and kind of how that's developed into what you're doing now, Jubilee Capital, and we'll kind of work down from there.
Yeah, so I've been involved in charities since I was at least in college. We have several friends that are missionaries in different countries and different locations, and now I've been around long enough that a lot of those missionaries have come back and are kind of have more regular jobs in the States, and so I've seen that whole
Mm-hmm.
process. And there's this book called "When Giving Hurts," and so like one of my friends was a missionary in Haiti, and there's a very real concept that white people come and they do the mission work, and so the black kids, like the little Haitian kids, think that they need a white person to come and hand out the shoes or hand out the thing. They don't, like you or I, we like, okay, I'm stuck, what do I do to fix this?
Yeah.
And I think that's racially even across in the United States, but when you go to somewhere else where there's been a long-term missionary presence, the people are kind of like, well, we'll see what the missionary has to say, because the missionary comes into town and they have essentially a Palo Alto level of technology and a level of funding, and they have
Sure.
they're the solutions, and it actually retards the natural solutions that would make sense in that environment. So there's this very real idea of when giving hurts, right? And so when you look at the landscape over here, you have just like straight up evil, profit only oriented capitalism, and then over here you have just like altruistic, I'm giving my life to live in a monastery and be a nonprofit.
Sure.
And then like you kind of cheat this way a little bit, and you have like the local nonprofits that you give to here in town. Lexington has an amazing one called Lexington Leadership Foundation.
Yep.
And they are not preachy. They're just worried about taking people of faith and goodwill and articulating the problems that need to be solved, and then connecting people that want to give time or resources to people in the city that need it. And it's this beautiful public-private partnership. Very, very pretty. I think it's one of the more healthy nonprofits that I see.
I agree. Yep.
And then over here in the entrepreneurial land, you have people that are doing good work. For instance, cleaning houses and businesses. We all need clean houses and businesses, right? So that's like just good work, solid work, lawns, landscaping, plumbing, HVAC, just good work that was supposed to be done. And then if you want to be like, prove that you're a really good person, you might give them a free pair of shoes to some other kids in Africa. Obviously poking fun at, I don't want to use names here. We'll just call it Bob's shoes. Let's just call it Bob's shoes. So where you use these kids you're giving free shoes to as your marketing campaign, and it's called a B Corp, and there's like a whole movement about it.
Yep.
But what we find is that B Corps are essentially just for-profits that use kids as marketing, which is like very similar to the when giving hurts thing. So this massive divide between sustainable, like this, if I do this thing, the problem will be solved forever. It will continuously solve itself. Or there's a black hole and I'm going to have to keep giving money. And so when you talk people that are in the giving mode, there's like large family offices. You either see giving as a marketing campaign, which a lot of like Fortune 500s, they have a philanthropy arm, which they do continuously good work. I'm not picking on the work that they do. And some problems have to be solved through a handout. That's fine. But the majority of problems that we have is I have a heart to give and I have this problem that needs solving, but there is an economic solution that could happen, right? And so we either look to the government to solve the problem, or we look to the rich old lady down the street that didn't have kids, maybe she should keep giving money. But the people that are giving are exhausted because we're like, well, these problems keep growing and they're not solving themselves. So we need a different method.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then going into that, does that kind of tie in with you got the caretaker and gardener metaphor? I know I'm kind of like jumping on all the metaphor trades, but I'm working my way through some of the stuff that I've seen on your site for this. Tell me in kind of what the key differences are between those two and how like we see the world in those different roles.
Yeah. So starting in the 1980s, there's a couple of legislative changes that happened that opened up some doors to essentially collapse the small business in America. Before 1980, you essentially like probability was you had a small family business. And then certainly post the 2000s, probability is that you work in a factory somewhere. You either work at like a factory or you work in a software factory, but you work for somebody else.
Yeah.
And with that shift, and you know this because you own some companies, there's a fundamental difference between I manage something, or even I'm a CEO with a board that I report to, and I own something. When you own something, you can sell it tomorrow and give all of your money to the poor if you want.
Yeah.
When you're the CEO, there's this obligation to grow the business, no matter whether it's healthy or needs to continue or not. In the government sectors, there's actually, you should be very, very careful of ever starting an organization like a Department of Education, we'll say, or Department of Defense or whatever, because once you achieve the objective, like there's this group of folks that were trying to solve world hunger, and they said we want to get everybody in the world up to $1 a day of food. Right. That's national world poverty. We want to raise world poverty. We want to get people out of poverty. They hit the number. They hit they got everybody to $1 a day in food. And then they were like, well, we should shut down the company now. Like, no, they said, no, let's just change the goalpost. And now let's go for $2.50 a day. And so whenever you start a organization, the organization itself starts to take on a life of its own. And then it starts to just kind of like feed itself. And so your original question was about consuming or being a consumer or being a caretaker. There was this world, and most of us barely remember it, in which most people own their own business. And so their concerns were for their kids and for their local community. And when they did something in the business, they had to look people in the eyeball and they had to say, yeah, this is the right thing to do. It's the right thing for my employees. It's the right thing for my customers. It's the right thing for my family. It's the right thing for my community. Today, most companies are bought up and treed up into some large organization. And so the question is, what's best for the profit line? And we can talk about the Whitehall studies, but the short version of that is the further you draw the distance between the decision maker and the consequence holder, the more diabolical those decisions can be. For instance, I think we all agree slavery is horrible, right? Raise your hand if you think slavery is horrible. As long as you can see it. But if it has to do with mining lithium batteries in Africa or putting together the iPhone that we all put to our cheek every day, well, that's not slavery because that would be uncomfortable. So the distance that we can put between the decision maker and the consequence holder, as long as it's like the Pacific Ocean, we're totally cool with it. We're not worried about slavery. And so how can we shrink that distance so that the owners, the decision makers, are looking at their employees and they're looking at their customers and they're looking at their family and they're looking at their community again? How do we close that loop? And I think once you close that loop, a lot of moral and ethical decision making gets really simple.
Yeah. Okay. So that's very helpful. So now having kind of addressed that and kind of seeing the situations that have existed, particularly in more recent memory, what does that look like from the perspective, what you're doing at Jubilee Capital, looking out at those problems now? And how are you wanting to change the paradigm from an investing, from an impact standpoint? How does that operate? What does that look like?
Yeah. So the greatest engine to solve world poverty that's ever been invented is called the free market. It's a business, right? If you just go to cavemen, we decided, hey, we should farm some sheep. And so we started farming sheep. So business and enterprise are the best way to solve all of the problems that face us as humanity. So we need to get that happening more. Some of that has to do with regulation, but most of it just has to do with some capital and some education to make it go happen. So if you go to 2000, which is like the real rise of venture capital, there's some of it's in the 90s, but it's like really, really in the 2000s with the various booms. They discover, man, venture capital can supercharge industry and innovation, and we can really start doing some amazing things. Because now you have these large funds of capital and
Yeah.
advice being funneled into all these ideas.
Yep.
But somewhere along the way, we lost our way because the opportunity for profit is so high. Venture capital started acting a whole lot like fund. Like, so a venture capital fund, the word
Yep.
fund, and a hedge fund manager are basically the same thing. The hedge fund manager is just
Yeah.
dealing with straight securities, whereas the venture capitalist is dealing with a business.
Right.
But the opportunity to make huge amounts of cash, as long as you can turn your blind eye to a couple of behaviors, is super tempting. And so,
Mm-hmm.
what Jubilee Capital is doing is saying, "Hey, can we take this amazing engine for generating owners called venture capital, and can we put some moral guidelines on it, and can we focus it back towards sustainability?" So, smaller communities, which I call decentralization, smaller
Mm-hmm.
communities, sustainability and resilience, which is, for instance, example, the electrical grid is extremely vulnerable to attack. Like,
Yeah.
it's an old grid.
Yep.
So can we make microgrids? Can we bring all of the things that make America amazing and make us a first world country? Can we bring those down and allow individual business owners to compete against the big guy? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that it's possible with tech. We can talk about the investing philosophy there, but can we use venture capital, that engine, to make America resilient again, if you will? Not to
Yeah.
use language that might cause some people to be too excited.
Okay. Okay. So how does that look like? I know you have a like this system of prize and impact through Jubilee Capital. I read that you want to spark and strengthen and spread. Is that right? Or like S's,
Spark,
spark,
strengthen, and
strengthen, and
spread.
spread.
Yep.
Okay. So just drive that out a little bit for us. What is your model? How does it actively play out in a real world scenario there?
Yeah. So if you look at venture capital, and I've been coaching entrepreneurs and venture capital folks for a long time, the number one problem that I see in the startup world is what I call they're 10 degrees off of useful. That is to say, they have this really amazing idea. They're like, hey, man, we're going to make this mug. It's going to be awesome. And
Yeah.
we're going to make it like, because it's really hard to wash, we're going to take out the bottom. It's just going to be a mug without a bottom, and it'll be super easy to wash. I'm like, yes. However, the point of the mug is to cold water. And they're like, yeah. But you don't understand. You're not seeing it. We could just take out the bottom. I'm like, no, that's not a good idea. So you've been in this space. You understand what I'm talking about, right?
We have heard this before. That's great.
So the first thing that we need to do is we need to define better problems. We have
Okay.
loads of energy towards doing something useful. In fact, if you look at the
Mhm.
millennials and the Gen Zers, they're not corporate ladder climbers. They realize that golden ladder has sailed. That's not for them. All of that money is kind of the incentive structures has changed. And
Yep.
we're in what I call the let's start a band stage. So they're like, man, let's start a band. It'll be great. We'll get some girls. It'll be awesome. And they haven't decided, well, what do people want yet?
Sure. Okay.
So SpaceX is kind of a topic in the news today, right?
Yeah.
SpaceX is privatized space flight. So when I was in college, there was no privatized space flight. How did we get from none from NASA to SpaceX? This guy named Ansari started the Ansari X Prize. He put out $10 million and said, if somebody can fly to space put 3 people into space in a spacecraft, land, and then go back to space in 2 weeks, so that's a reusable vehicle,
Yep.
I'll give him $10 million. So that's
Yeah.
an X Prize. That's the same way that Charles Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic. It's the same
Sure.
way that
Yep.
the Wright brothers were actually chasing a prize similar to that. So the mathematics of the prize are really interesting. First of all, you have a very clearly defined goal. Like, hey, you can achieve this. It's metric based. If you achieve this, I'll give you money. Second of all, it's results driven. So it's not like 10 teams go and then you pitch your idea at a competition and then MIT guy gets the money because he's from MIT.
Sure.
So it's outcomes results driven. And then you only pay the person that wins. So you're not paying everybody that tried, you're paying the person that wins. Well, what's cool about that is the data says that you get between 30 and 50 times as many dollars chasing the prize as the prize is worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Talk about a return on investment. So if you, we go all the way back to that the old lady who doesn't have kids and she wants to give all her money away to a charity, right? Let's say that she's going to give away $10 million. $10 million is going to go to charity. If she puts that in a prize, she might get she might get $500 million chasing the same problem. So the prize system does two things. Remember I said that entrepreneurs are about 10 degrees off of useful? The prize system solves that by saying, hey, here's a real problem I would pay to see solved. So you get a very clear goal, which then like galvanizes people towards the goal.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are trying to accomplish that goal because it's aspirational, so it's worth doing.
Yeah.
And it's financially incentivized, like there's enough money to be won. But then the throw off technology is, let's be conservative. Let's say it's 5 to 10 times as much. Like there's no such thing as a venture capitalist that's making 10x their return. Right. Maybe on the fund because of one thing, but generally most venture capital firms fail.
Right.
So the first wing is let's define the actual problem, and then let's put some money that incentivizes other people to chase it. In the SpaceX idea, there was $10 million put out there, which sparked a $497 billion a year industry. Right. Now that's 20 years, but they developed the technologies to get us there. So then I look at poverty or homelessness. Hey, can we do an X prize that solves the problems really involved? And can we really move ourselves as a species forward? I think we can. So that's sparking.
Yeah. So you're predominantly concerned with clearly delineating what the actual goal is on the front end from the Jubilee Capital's position, right? Rather than having a bunch of money in and you're just trying to figure out how to move it so that I think it's like 1 out of 20-ish investments for a VC firm essentially makes money and repays the fund, right? So it's basically a numbers game, because if you're handling billions of dollars, you can ship out a bunch of checks, and as long as your math is good, 1 out of 20 comes back. It's really just, at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter what it is or what made the money, or like, it's just as long as it all balances out and the LPs get a check. It's interesting because like I see that side of the VC, and it's like, it's fascinating. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we're moving, tremendous amounts of money around, but you could do that and literally see no involvement. Like, technology is going to continue to advance. There's going to be software change, and like, it's going to be kind of somewhere downstream effect. But when you're talking about a big problem or a big goal like space transit, that's not just a cool little app I have on my phone that helps me save 5 minutes a day. It's a little more significant. So you're taking, let's start with from the position of the capital firm. Like, we're going to say, this is what we'd like to see happen. Here's the prize. Who can do it? And let's see what kind of chase comes on the back end with that.
Yes.
Okay.
So to put a little finer edge to the VC game, and I think that I might be assassinated for this, but it's for your viewers. So if something happens to me in the next 2 weeks, you'll know.
Yeah.
The VC game is very closely held. There's only a couple of people playing in the VC game. I mean, there's probably 1,000 or 2,000, but that's not a big number. And so a lot of these firms are investing in the same companies or competitor companies. And so like Xometry, we saw this happen. There's one called, I think it was Makerspace or MakeSpace, or make.com, something like that. And so we have one startup with, like, they think we can solve this democratized metal manufacturing this way, and the other one says we think we can do it this way, and a third one says, so there's about 4 companies all invested into in the same time period by essentially the same 10 or 15 investors, VC funds. And then so these guys are working at like no salary, like $50,000 a year maybe salaries for like 3 years, and then the VCs get together and they say, we like Xometry the best, and then they just tell the other 3, hey, you guys are out of cash and Xometry has the most traction, so Xometry is going to buy you guys, and we're going to pay Xometry to buy you guys. So all of this technology then like kind of rolls into one business, and then it now has the entire market. So it's not a fair playing field is what I'm saying. It's not like, oh, the open market is investing in all these companies and seeing if they grow. It's we're investing in, so 20 companies fail and one makes it, but that one company is actually like sucking up all of the IP from all those ones that failed, and then it
Right.
makes it pretty well. But all the VC folks were invested in all of them, and then
Yep.
they're invested in the success over here.
Yep.
So, and then their goal is to sell it off to Amazon or to an Apple at some huge multiple now that they have all the IP and the market contained. So it's not really doing what it should do. It should be sparking a lot more ownership and a lot more competition in the market. But
Right.
because there's a lot of money to be made in not doing that,
Yeah.
a bit of backdoor deals occur, and it can be
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very predatory.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I didn't know this when I first got into software and started raising, we were pitching on like kind of local levels, but once you get into the VC realm more nationally and the bigger fish that are out there, there are firms that are very proud of the fact that one of the first things they do when they invest is fire the founders, right?
Totally.
So, and like that, it doesn't really, because if you are getting close to an IPO of anything in the neighborhood of $1 billion, the founder doesn't really care if they're there. Like in very rare circumstances, care, right? Like sure, I can walk away for 700 million on this startup that I put together 8 years ago. Like I don't give a rip. And so yeah, you like the money gets to be so large that even in your best case, like this is how I'm going to affect some change in a critical way. Like at some point, the dollar sign's just, it's like, yep, you guys figure out however you want to do. I'll exit. You pay me out, and everybody's happy. So there's a line I've seen you use. It's called connecting capital to calling. So I want to zero in a little bit that. Are you referring to the calling, like in the entrepreneurs that you support? Is that kind of where that spark is found? Walk me through that, because I've kind of got a second question on the back end of that as well.
Yeah. No, straight. The calling is a calling from God, or as the Blues Brothers say, I'm on a mission from God. No, legitimately. So the belief is, in order to, and this kind of goes back to consumption versus caretaking. There's this interesting passage in Leviticus 25, which is where the name comes from. It's about the year of Jubilee, which is super fascinating for anybody that wants to read it. But God makes this side comment, and he says because the earth is mine, and you're just sojourners in it. Now, if you come from a Christian Judeo worldview, you can just go to Leviticus. If you come from a more modern worldview, you could say, listen, we're not going to be here forever. Like you're just here for a little bit. And so the earth doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to your great grandkids at best. Right. And if you treat it up the other way, you realize that we're all just cousins. Like we're all the same family. We all came from the same group. So the idea of being predatory to each other doesn't make sense. However, so that's one kind of statement to think about. The next statement is this. You're a man of faith, and you're a man of moral and desire to give, right? You're philanthropic. There is so much need in this world. Like the size of me is this big, and the size of the need doesn't even scale. It's so huge, right? There's no way I can possibly make a dent in the world. But if I connect with God and I say, God, what are you calling me to do this year, this month, today? That's not a very big. God knows how small we are. He's pretty big. We're pretty small. And we can make a massive difference in our world, but not if we try to make a massive difference in our world. We can make the most difference when we're saying, hey, look, this is what I'm called to. I'm called to help people grow and scale their companies, to learn how to lead their teams well, right? That's my little tiny chunk of the world. And so if I do that super well, then I will bless the people that need to. And I trust that there's other people that are called to do the homelessness thing, or do the mentorship of kids, or throw a football. Like, you want to make a real impact on the world? Throw a football with a kid that has a parent that's incarcerated. That makes a big difference in the world. Am I called to do that? Not at the moment. I got 4 kids I have to throw a football with at my house, right? So when you connect capital to somebody that's clearly dialed in on their calling, your community starts to thrive, because the guy that's supposed to throw football is suddenly funded to throw football. And the guy that's called to start a bakery is suddenly starting a bakery that he should have started. And the guy that's starting a lawn care business, and then their employees, the community thrives not when we pull all the money up to the top and then the central government distributes the money out so that everybody's equal. No, it happens when each one of us trusts in the Lord and says, hey, this is what I'm called to do. And they stay in their lane, and they do that really well. And then everything starts to flourish. And so Jubilee's purpose is to describe the problems that need to be solved. And I trust that God's going to bring the people that are supposed to solve those things. And then of the solutions that are good, there's a VC firm to invest in those to see those start to grow.
Yeah. Okay. So then how does that, let's say a solution is found, how would Jubilee Capital, give me maybe a hypothetical situation, how they move from that like single spark to strengthening and spreading the solution once you've identified it and you have people in place, you're like, hey, I think these are the people that are going to make this work and move the needle here.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it strictly, I mean, I'm assuming we talked a little bit about the prize and how that X prize would function. Is that kind of where that starts to come into play? At what stage does that start to be implemented there?
So you're in the marketing, or you're in the entrepreneur space, and you understand that no business happens without marketing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Somebody has to know what's going on. We both live in Kentucky. Right over the river from Kentucky is Cincinnati, and Cincinnati has all sorts of Fortune 500s. The biggest gorilla on that block is P&G, Procter and Gamble. Universally, it is difficult to walk Kentucky startup into Procter and Gamble. A lot of times because Procter and Gamble has problems that we don't know that they have, and so we're like throwing darts at the wall. We're like, hey, we can make bourbon for your baby bottles, and they're like, that's not what we're trying to do here. Right. So there's a line of communication that needs to happen.
Sure.
And then when we do something amazing, like Electromet is like one of the champions on the block today. Electromet has this really cost-effective way to pull a bunch of metals out of wastewater that has been cost ineffective in the past. So magic wand, they can get stuff out of the water that we couldn't previously. It's a good way to think of it. So they're an ideal client for Procter and Gamble. Procter and Gamble does a lot of things with water, mostly mixing and then spilling it into our society. But just picking on Procter and Gamble. Can we open doors to Procter and Gamble? Well, how do you do that? You have to get access to their executives. In every large company, there's what I call a check writer. So, and then there's right below the check writer, there's one or two gatekeepers. And so the game is, how can we bypass the gatekeepers and get into the check writers? You have to be a trusted advisor to make that happen. So can we put on conferences? Can we put on podcasts? Can we champion and trumpet the solutions that make sense? And can we get them funded by customers because right now in the Lexington ecosphere, the startups will tell you how successful they are by, I raised this much money or I got this much grant, which is not a story of success. It's a story of debt that is just leveraged in a different, unique way. It doesn't become a business until you have enough customers to make positive cash flow.
Right.
So customers is how you define success, not funding. So if all I did was say, hey, this is the problem and here's some money to go start it, but I didn't help you find customers, then I would have propagated the problem and wasted a bunch of money in the process. So there's a whole arm of Jubilee that puts on events that we invite executives to, and then kind of TEDx style, we expose the executives to the solutions. Here's the problem set. Here's the solutions that we have. Would you like to be a customer? And so that's the last part of Jubilee is spark, describe the problem that needs to be solved, strengthen, let's fund it, let's get it operational, let's get it working, and spread it. Let's go talk to customers and help be that marketing arm for the solutions that are worth spreading.
Okay. That's awesome. All right. So then to kind of wrap back into that, we talked about the charity trap at the beginning. If someone's listening right now and they are tired of that charity trap, they've experienced kind of that end of things, and they are maybe a potential donor, an entrepreneur, or just somebody who believes in the vision of Jubilee Capital, what can they do right now? What's the, I guess, most important thing they can do to get involved or start thinking differently about these things? And maybe whether it's getting connected with you or otherwise.
Well, like a good traveling preacher, I'll pass the hat. The answer is to give. So if you want to be and so the other beautiful part about Jubilee is there's two ways to give. You can give through a nonprofit, that is to set up the prizes. So the prizes are nonprofit. The research that we develop for that are nonprofit. That is available to the community, because the more people chasing that prize, the more we win. So there's a nonprofit tax deductible way to give. And then there's, if you're in this spot where you're like, I do have money to give, but I feel that stewardship requires me to get a good return on that. This is the real magic of Jubilee is, hey, come and invest with us. Be a part of the first fund. We're raising money right now. So I think probably having a call with me, and I think I sent you a link. If not, we can get that link up there. Set up a call with me and I will talk through what you're giving, where your heart's at. We have a nonprofit solution. We have we have an investing solution, and then we have a big conference that we're bringing to Georgetown. It'll be about 300 executives in May. If you want to sponsor that conference, I'd love to have you there.
Woo! There you go.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, I do have that link to your booking page. I'm sharing that in the show notes. And yeah, I would definitely encourage anybody this has sparked any sort of interest at all. You really should sit down with Drew. Like I said, I've known him for a good while, and I don't want to I don't want to over, hype things too much, but you're someone I think of when I think of like the Midas, the story of the Midas touch. Like this is anything Drew is putting his effort into is just something I think of as going to be turning to gold, and that can be in a profitable way as well, but also I think more importantly what he's talking about in terms of real change down the line for communities, that becoming gold is much more incredible and impressive to me. So I'm excited, Drew. I am just pumped to see what the next 10 years looks like for Jubilee Capital and for any and all of us who can get involved and take part in that. So please do book a time to talk with Drew if you see yourself fitting into one of these categories he's talked about, and just to stay in touch, follow him, connect with you on LinkedIn as well. I'm going to share that link in the bio so they can at least be connected with you there. And man, this is exciting. I feel like this is great things coming down the road. I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing with us. And we'll do a recap episode here maybe in a year or two, and talk about where things are at that point, and maybe do an update.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Drew. Cheers, and hope you have an awesome rest of your week, brother.
Cheers.